I think could be the who I think could be considered the greatest. Who's the greatest in the NBA? I you always get this question a lot. This is NBA final seasons. I know that there's been a lot of talk out there, particularly from a guy named Scottie Pippen, how Michael isn't as good as everybody makes him out to be. So, I figured I would go ahead and do a video because, I find this a little bit intriguing because, of course, I'm going to be a little bit biased. I'm going to go with, like Tim Duncan or David Robinson. One of those guys would be my all time favorite because I'm a Spurs fan. However, with that being said, I'm also a realist. And so, really, those Spurs teams were just really, really great teams. And, I think that definitely, when you're considering somebody, then a guy like Tim Duncan can be considered one of the greatest leaders in the NBA history. However, we're here to talk about who is the greatest player, and it always comes down, normally it comes down to Jordan, and it comes down to LeBron. But dare I say, we should probably put Kobe in the discussion as well. So I'm going to go ahead and break it down and explain why I come out, do a little bit of reasoning and really put a lot of thought into this instead of going over there saying Jordan had 30 average 35 points in the game in 1991 and that's why he's the greatest. Let's do a little bit of thinking about it. Let's just not come up to like a rash decision. So, okay, I'll go ahead and start with Michael Jordan. All right, 1984, coming out of North Carolina. Uh, in the 1984 NBA draft, there was a highly touted prospect that teams were just salivating for. Everybody was trying to tank to get this guy. And that man was Hakeem Olajuwon. Not Michael Jordan, actually. Now, mind you, that Jordan is, he had a dynasty. Won six straight, or he won six NBA titles, three and then three again from that class. So no doubt that Jordan has earned his reputation as being considered as one of the greatest of all times. Definitely, beside Bill Russell, which would probably effectively be the greatest of all time, actually, just because of his resume with the 11 championships it is for that man. So no, you would have to definitely consider him being, if you're going off of championships, Jordan would actually be third. If that's what we're going off of, if it's just straight winning championships, Jordan would be behind Robert Horry. You see what I'm saying? So you got to do a little bit more than that. Now, was Jordan probably the most dominant scorer of all time? Absolutely. I mean, especially, he was probably also one of the more clutch players at all time. He was such a competitor coming out. But with that being said, Michael Jordan at the beginning of his career suffered from a lot of what Russell Westbrook suffers from, of just being the main scorer and not getting anybody involved. Thus, he didn't really win a lot whenever he was coming out. Yeah, he made the playoffs, but teams would otherwise know that you stop Jordan, you stop the Chicago Bulls. If Jordan's only scoring, 60 points, they're not going to beat you. You know what I'm saying? That they had it figured out to a science, and it really wasn't until Scottie Pippen. And with all due respect, Scottie Pippen does earn credibility for those Bulls championship runs because he was the primary defender. The Chicago Bulls won championship because of their defense, not because of their offense. Now, granted, their offense was pretty strong, but it was they had a strong defense between Jordan and Pippen. And so, Jordan didn't have a lot of success. And mind you, while they're sitting there saying that Jordan had nothing but bombs, his first year in the league, he had George Gervin there with him. which is probably one of the league's best scorers. It's one of the best scorers in NBA history is George Gervin. And I meant, Jordan had talent around him them first few years. So it's not like you could sit there and use, the same conversations whenever we're talking about Kobe and Smush Parker or LeBron and, his first title run in Cleveland. Jordan actually had, a decent team there. He had decent players around him. They may not have been, George Gervin might have been at the end of his career, and a lot of those players may not have been perennial all-stars, but they were pretty solid. And then it wasn't until they added another premium defender that could run and balance out Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen. So, the deal with Jordan, and the reason why Jordan had, because, you look at in the 80s, right? Whenever Jordan was just coming in, right before he hit that 90s run of him being into his prime, he really wasn't winning titles. He wasn't beating the Boston Celtics to go play Elijah Wan in the NBA Finals. He wasn't beating the bad boy Detroit Pistons. You know what I'm saying? Those teams had winning down to a science. And there's no way that Jordan was winning titles without Scottie Pippen. So, and everybody could sit there and say what they want. He's, he wasn't winning. The man wasn't winning whenever he, before Pippen got there. Like I said, it took really at the end of the day, it didn't only just take Pippen coming in, it also took Phil Jackson taking over and then playing more as a team. If Jordan was allowed to be Jordan, you never have a Phil Jackson, you never have a Scottie Pippen, then we may not be having this conversation about Jordan being the greatest. He would have probably been similar. He would probably be looked upon like Vince Carter is. He's a very dynamic player, was one of the more exciting players, kind of like a Michael Vick, but he just couldn't get it done. Ultimately, I would rather have the Larry Birds and Magic Johnsons who could win, who could set up the offense, who could play defense, and can go ahead and win you titles. That's what we would be saying. He wouldn't even be considered one of the greatest if it wasn't for Phil Jackson and then Scottie Pippen balancing him out on the defense, to be honest with you. So the sheer fact that he did have these, people come into his life to go ahead and put him on the right track to go ahead and be a champion, well, that says it all. Because like I said, for the most part, whenever you're talking about NBA fans, Michael Jordan is the greatest in that stat, or LeBron James is the greatest in that stat, but it takes a little bit more than just saying it. I could sit there and say all day long, oh yeah, Michael Jordan is the greatest and he's so much better because he's won 6 championships, to what is LeBron got now, 3? And or is it 4 now? I don't know if it's 3 or is it 4. Let me see. He won 1. Did he? Oh, he won 2 in Miami, won 1 in Cleveland. So he's at 4, right? And I mean, it's bad because it's become, the LeBron James era has just become so forgettable. But supposedly he's won 4 alleged championships, which is just what I'm going to call them, 4 alleged championships, to Jordan 6. And like I said, Jordan never lost once he got in there. But whenever you're looking at Jordan and the level of competition that he was playing against in the East, it really, that East was pretty light. I don't mind you that you had the New York Knicks were probably the second best team whenever Jordan was winning championships. They were probably the toughest opponent that the Chicago Bulls had was the New York Knicks back in the 90s. In the sheer fact that they never won a championship with that team, it's actually kind of disappointing. But by all metrics, that was the hardest team. I mean, you had a team like Indiana Pacers with Reggie Miller. Reggie Miller was a hell of a player, but Reggie Miller isn't going to win you a title, with that team in Indiana. That Indiana team wasn't near competitive enough to go ahead and challenge Chicago Bulls, especially that defense of the Chicago Bulls, to win a title. You know what I'm saying? Or to be even a threat. You know, because Reggie Miller was probably 90% of that offense. And so, yeah, that was the Indiana Pacers were just too weak. The Boston Celtics dynasty had already crumbled by this point in time, so you didn't have any of the Larry Birds, and you didn't have, it didn't really come back around until the mid to late 2000s as being a dynasty team. So, that was supposed to be the main resistance for Michael Jordan. Then you had the Detroit Pistons. Once the Detroit Pistons broke up, then Jordan only had to beat the Knicks, which, mind you, that the Knicks gave him all he could handle, but ultimately he would be able to get past the Knicks because as good as, as tough as the Knicks were on defense, they had Patrick Ewing as their total offense. That was it. So they could hang with the Bulls defensively, but they couldn't hang with them on offense. So this is basically and like I said, mind you that the East did have some exciting teams in them, but they were all rookies. You can't sit there and say that the Carolina Hornets were competitive with Michael Jordan, with a rookie Larry Johnson, with a rookie Alonzo Mourning, with the Muggsy Bogues. These guys weren't going to compete at the level, especially defensively, because these guys were still trying to get their feet under them and learn more about the game. Then you had Shaq come in. Okay, Shaq, but we know what Shaq is about. There's no way that he was going to be able to physically pace and keep up, particularly on the defensive side with the Chicago Bulls. He was still young. He was a little bit immature. He had Anthony Hardaway. Don't get me wrong, I liked the Orlando Magic back then. But I know that whenever Jordan retired, came back for that 1 year, the Orlando Magic actually ended up beating them to get swept by the Houston Rockets. However, you look at the West and you look at how deep the West was. And this is what made it easy for Jordan and the Chicago Bulls. So the only real contest that you have in Chicago to get that's going to take you to the limit is the New York Knicks. That's the only team that's going to take you to the limit. The other teams, they're not going to challenge too much. So if you're talking about having to go a 6 to 7 game series with the New York Knicks, where just about every series in the West was, going to be, it was just you didn't win the West, you survived the West. Because, in the West, you had teams like the Seattle Supersonics with Sean Kemp and Gary Payton that were just stingy. They were just, athletically. And, even that with the teams like that didn't really even do anything, the weak teams, the jobber teams like Golden Sprewell and Chris Mullins. Those teams were pretty freaking hard. You had Dallas Mavericks with Jamal Mashburn, Jim Jackson, and Jason Kidd, the 3 J's. And so, those teams would come in and they would try and compete, even if they couldn't. Even if they were the weakest team, they would end up trying to compete day in and day out. Then you had the Houston Rockets with Hakeem Olajuwon, which, mind you, Michael Jordan didn't want any part of Hakeem Olajuwon. Michael Jordan will be the first one to tell you that if they had to play the Rockets, they probably couldn't beat the Rockets because they didn't have anybody that could stop Hakeem from doing what Hakeem wanted to do. And, so you go past that, you had Denver with Dikembe Mutombo, who is, kind of, these were defensive, freaking not only just offense, but on defense, it was harder to score in the West with those big guys. Then you had David Robinson on the San Antonio Spurs, which, was very athletic, who could scored 70 some odd points, and could play defense because all these teams were tough. And even if, you don't face one of those teams, what about Karl Malone and, the Utah Jazz with John Stockton? Clyde Drexler in Portland and that team. I mean, the teams in the West were stacked. They were absolutely stacked. Charles Barkley ended up moving to the West in the 90s whenever Jordan. So you had Charles Barkley and the Phoenix Suns with Dan Marley, playing over there. And, Jordan only had to face one of those teams. He didn't have to go through the whole gauntlet like those teams had to go through getting into the playoffs. So I consider Jordan a lot like Joe Montana. Joe Montana was a great quarterback, won 4 Super Bowls. You know what I'm saying? But if Joe Montana was playing in the NFC East instead of the NFC West, Joe Montana isn't considered one of the greatest. He'd be lucky. He'd be lucky to win a Super Bowl, and that's if he even made it, if he could make it out of the division. But he played in a weekend, and you go back and look at his history of when he won them Super Bowls. He certainly wasn't playing, the NFC East in those years that he won the Super Bowl. I mean, he might have in the playoffs, but in the regular season, he wasn't. So this is what I see from Jordan. Was he a dynamic scorer? He's probably one of the more athletic people to ever play the game. He just had the speed, he had the mental tenacity, but he was, partially a sociopath. So, I got to figure, if Jordan's in the West and he's playing against Robinson, Hakeem, and, Sean Kemp, and people that would give him a run for his money on a nightly basis, and then he has to take a lower seed, and he's playing series that are longer and drawn out, he probably doesn't even win close to 6 NBA championships. He'd probably be lucky to win 2 or 3. You know what I'm saying? That would be good. Don't get me wrong. There'd be nothing wrong with that. But he would be lucky to win 2 or 3 if he would have played with Hakeem and Clyde Drexler and Sean Kemp and David Robinson and Karl Malone and all these guys. And he had to face, one of these guys, week in and week out, instead of facing, the New Jersey Nets or the 76ers at the time or the Cleveland Cavaliers, Brad Doherty or somebody. The level of competition in the East was relegated to Chicago and New York for the most part. Like I said, you had good, young, talented players, but they were coming in after Jordan started winning titles, not before. Shaq came in after Jordan won his first title. He might have came in when he won his second. So he was a rookie. Larry Johnson's the same thing. Alonzo Mourning's the same thing. They were all coming in right as Jordan was starting to win his titles. So it's not like Jordan had to play in a stacked league. So I think that Michael Jordan is incredibly overrated. Of course, you look like a freaking you'll look like a damn Greek god against half because the Boston Celtics were not relevant at the time. They were barely competitive. The whole damn Eastern Conference was weak whenever Jordan was winning those titles. And having one of the best defenders and Scottie Pippen as your wingman certainly is going to help you win titles. So, you got to take that into consideration too. And, still even that year that you came back, took a year off and came back that next year, you ended up getting beat by Orlando and then had to bring in another all-star caliber player in Dennis Rodman to come in and add a little bit more for that defense for you to win your next 3 titles. So, I had to put that little asterisk there by Michael Jordan whenever we're considering Michael Jordan being the greatest. So now I'll go ahead and bring in Kobe, Bean, Bryant, because ultimately I know that Kobe should be a part of this conversations. I know that Jordan fans don't want to respect Kobe and make him a part of the conversation. They do now. Now that the LeBron fans think that LeBron's hot shit, they'll allow Kobe to be talked about positively, particularly since his accident, I think, a little bit more. But no, for a while there, it was just like, oh, well, it's this joke of, yeah, these Kobe people think that Kobe, and mind you, I'm not a Kobe person because I'm a San Antonio Spurs fan. He took how many freaking titles away from us? More than enough. But you gotta. This is out of respect for the game. You know what I'm saying? So when we talk about Kobe, first off, the NBA didn't want Kobe to even come in. I mean, you looked at first year. They did everything they could to discourage Kobe from, to be honest with you. He came off the bench. And like I said, I understand it. It was a business. The NBA didn't want Kobe to be the Black Mamba, to be the face of the NBA. They really didn't. They were happy with Michael Jordan, and they didn't want to transition to Kobe. And the reason why they didn't want to transition to Kobe is because Kobe came straight from high school into the NBA because he wanted to face Michael Jordan before Michael Jordan retired. Essentially, that's why he came into the NBA as young as he did. So I meant, Kobe came in, and was he a prolific scorer? No, he was coming off the bench. You know what I'm saying? And this is why I say you really can't use statistics. You can't use statistics. I watched some video over there where they were talking about how Michael Jordan was scoring all these points, yada, yada, yada. Scotty didn't contribute anything. They didn't take in consideration that Scotty was only playing 20 minutes a game. And this is pretty much what was going on with Kobe Bryant his first year. He wasn't playing that much. He was coming off the bench. He wasn't getting that many minutes in these games. And, he was just getting a lot of garbage time, anyways. However, whenever Kobe got to rolling, Kobe ended up really taking over that team and blossoming into the player that I think that I think that to a degree, Michael Jordan was a little bit jealous because Kobe was having his experience at a younger age than Michael Jordan was because he came in earlier. So, whenever I look at Kobe, and this is the thing I can sit there and say about Kobe, is when Kobe came in, I mean, ultimately he was playing the Bill Russell of his generation. Essentially, Kobe looked at Mike as a mentor, and Dr. J before that, and then Tim Duncan was basically the clone of Bill Russell. So, the thing I could sit there and say about Kobe is, unlike Michael Jordan, Kobe Kobe played in a stacked league. He played in a stacked league. I mean, he played in the Western Conference, which by this time, the Eastern Conference isn't as weak at this point in time as the West is. But I can guarantee you the conference that Kobe played in was a hell of a lot harder than Michael Jordan's conference at the time. By about the time that Kobe came in, the two conferences had balanced out where you had pretty strong play out of the Boston Celtics. You had pretty strong play from a number of other teams in the East whenever he was winning his titles. They had, so it was balanced, but by far, Kobe had the harder road. I mean, the man beat 450 win teams to win his, I think it was his last NBA title. 450 win teams, which is absolutely insane that anybody would beat 450 win teams. Because in any other team, a 50 win team is, winning titles. And for you to beat four of them in a row just to win your last title, that's absolutely crazy. So, I look at Kobe's accomplishments and what Kobe did. And like I said, going against Tim Duncan, he was going up against the Bill Russell. So what you got to see in the Western Conference Finals was essentially Michael Jordan playing Bill Russell. And of course, they both got 5 rings apiece. They both brought out the highest level of competition out of each other. If Duncan isn't in the West, if Tim Duncan isn't in the West, then Kobe Bryant probably wins, 7 or 8, maybe 9 rings. Easy. Yeah, easy. You gonna tell me that if freaking it's Duncan in the if Kobe gets up and plays LeBron in the NBA Finals in 2007, that he's not sweeping LeBron? He's probably sweeping LeBron. You know what I'm saying? And there's no telling how many of those rings that Kobe could have gotten that San Antonio ended up. And there's no telling if Kobe doesn't play for the Lakers, how many rings Tim Duncan. And this conversation could be easily with Duncan in there, to be honest with you, as being considered one of the greatest of all times, because he was fundamentally sound. However, like I said, but I see Duncan as being a part of a great team, and then Kobe being the like a player that carried his team. And in most situations, he was the one carrying the teams. Now, they'll make a lot of these things that he had Shaq and Shaq won those first. Like Kobe could have easily won 4 titles. You know what I'm saying? And I don't want to hear the Shaq debate because that's irrelevant. First off, Shaq is incredibly overrated. He's a good center, but I don't even know if I'd put him in my top 10 for sure, because there's a lot of good centers out there. I'm not going to put him over Kareem, and I'm not putting him over Wilt. I'm not putting him over Russell. I'm not putting him over Olajuwon, and I'm not putting him over Robinson. You know what I'm saying? That's the top 5 right there for me. Shaq is just, kind of like what LeBron is right now. He was a big walking commercial back in the days. So, I don't consider Shaq being the end all be all of saying, oh, well, we got to discard Kobe because his first 3 rings were with Shaq. Because I definitely think that y'all overrate Shaq. And I think that the only reason y'all overrate Shaq is because you just don't want to give Kobe any credit or whatnot. Because it was scary. Like, Kobe really probably could have easily won those 4 rings. If it wasn't for San Antonio. And I know that Jordan did everything that he could to help the Detroit Pistons. So Kobe didn't win that 6th ring. Trading off all these players. And, Jordan's petty like that. So I think that, he felt like his legacy was in jeopardy whenever, Kobe was closing in on another ring. He ended up aiding the team. But no, if it wasn't, like I said, if it wasn't for Tim Duncan, then Kobe would have won a lot more rings. Pretty easily. He would have won a lot more rings. Like I said, if Duncan won 5, right? If Kobe wins, just say 2 of those, he just wins 2 of them, then he's already beaten Jordan and he's gotten 7 rings. You see what I'm saying? So now we go to LeBron. And LeBron is just a stat patter. There's just nothing really to say about LeBron. There's no real intensity there for me to go ahead and call him the greatest. I do see his play improve, but it's not. Yeah, some of his plays are pretty good highlight clips. You know what I'm saying? Some of his plays are kind of exciting whenever LeBron gets into that mode of being LeBron. Like I said, but ultimately, he's not consistent enough. You're not going to build a franchise around him. He doesn't even have a true position. Is he a shooting guard? Is he a small forward? Is he a point guard? What position is this man? He's not the best at it, whatever he is. So how could I consider him the greatest of all time whenever he doesn't even have a position? And if he did pick a position, he certainly wouldn't be one of the greatest at that position. So it'd be impossible. But, he's the most statistically. He's probably statistically one of the greatest players of all times. Because you could put him on the weakest, opponent on a team, and he's going to score you a lot of points because he could play any position on the court. So, I think that, and like I said, out of all 3 of the guys, the NBA made a lot of money off of Michael Jordan. So that's why the NBA promotes Michael Jordan to the moon, because they've made a lot of money off of him. I think that to a degree, the NBA wanted to go to LeBron. And hold me on this one. This is why Kobe got so hated. This is why you have somebody like Gloria Allred out there claiming that Kobe Bryant, and I mean, they do this all the time now. But back then it was kind of new. So a lot of people, you got to forgive me if I fell into the trap. But back then, they would always sit there and throw these sexual assault cases around on TV and make a big deal about it. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of people were slow to catch on because it wasn't something that a lot of people expected. But I expect this is exactly why the NBA intentionally sabotaged Kobe. Was basically because they wanted to go with LeBron being the next Michael Jordan. And they knew that LeBron wasn't going to be able to fill Kobe's shoes, let alone Michael Jordan's shoes. So, and why do you say that the NBA was so desperate to get LeBron the exposure, the one where y'all are all out there, where you have a line of LeBron fans saying he's the GOAT, he's this. Why? Because LeBron was raised by a single mother. It's exactly who screwed one of his teammates too. But yeah, that's exactly what it is. That's why the NBA wanted to push LeBron out there. That's exactly why LeBron got awarded title after title. Well, championship series, he didn't get too many titles. Certainly not as much as Jordan, and whenever you look at Kobe Bryant, the reason he was so successful in his career is because his father pushed him. The reason why Michael Jordan was so successful as a basketball player is because his father pushed him. So ultimately, this is how social engineering works. This is exactly why they tried to shove LeBron James down your throat. Is because he was uh, raised by a single mother. Shaq dominated in the early 2000s and was the best player in the league. Also, Kobe never won a playoff series without a Hall of Fame, whatever. Yeah. So, like I said, you incredibly overrate Shaq. If you go back and watch, whenever Shaq was playing against NBA caliber big men like Hakeem, like Robinson, he would get embarrassed. He would be embarrassed. You're going to give Shaq credit. Like I said, Shaq is just one of these players, much like LeBron, that would go from team to team. And then, he would but Shaq wasn't incredibly athletic, particularly on the Lakers. He ended up slowing down. I remember those. I was actually watching back then, believe it or not. I was actually watching basketball back then. And certainly he wasn't as committed to playing basketball as he was to doing other stuff. So this is a placebo there. And now you have to go ahead and really make a stretch, which Gasol is a great player. He's a great player, don't get me wrong. But sure, you're not winning a title with Gasol by himself for sure. And I can tell you right now, if you want to go ahead and use Shaq, you're going to use Shaq. Shaq had Anthony Hardaway. What stopped him from doing it whenever he was actually at his physical peak? You know what I'm saying? And like I said, at the end of the day, I think that the reason why Jordan gets so much love still is because the NBA made so much money off of Michael Jordan. That's why he's always put out there as being the greatest of all times. And the reason why they're trying to switch that to LeBron as being a competitor is because he was raised by a single mom. And we understand how Hollywood, entertainment, social media, the leftists that are in charge of running these day-to-day operations understand they want to empower LeBron James as being raised and being the epitome of a young black man who was raised by a single mom coming up. I get it, it's a feel-good story, but you need to have the right person, you need to have the right talent. Like I said, they really kind of slept on Kobe. So ultimately, that's what we're looking at right here. So if I'm going to go ahead and make a judgment, because I guarantee you neither LeBron or Jordan, with what you're saying, a Hall of Fame. Neither one of those guys are winning a championship without their Hall of Fame talents. Name one. Name one time that Jordan did not win a fucking title without Scottie Pippen. Name it. And then you have LeBron there. He goes and joins Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh. Ultimately, that'd be like fucking joining John Stockton and Hakeem Olajuwon. Then he goes back to Cleveland and wins one with Kyrie and Kevin Love. It'd be like bringing in Reggie Miller and freaking, Sean Kemp, basically, essentially, for anybody else. You know? So, yeah, it is what it is. I think Jokic could be the guy. Oh, man, that dude's. Well, I mean, the NBA as a whole today is a joke. It's not even close to what it used to be. I mean, the NBA has been lowered for LeBron fans. They've lowered the bar so much for the NBA that I can't even watch it. That's why I was sitting there watching a video of Sean David, which by all means, go subscribe to Sean David. If you're really about some real basketball, real old school basketball, your NBA Time Machine channel with Sean David is absolutely my go-to anymore. I love watching his videos. I just like sitting back and listening to old stuff. But, and he's a Jordan fan. He's going to disagree with me. But certainly I have to go ahead. And if I'm going to sit there and say, if I'm doing an all-time draft, I'm definitely picking Kobe. And like I said, it's like trolling now. I definitely have to go with Kobe, though. Because Kobe did more. He had to play in a stacked division. He had to play with, you could say Paul Gasol, but, Paul Gasol isn't on the level of a Scottie Pippen. Not even close. He's a good Hall of Famer, and I can make the case for Duncan if you want me to, playing with Manu Ginobili. Manu Ginobili is a Hall of Famer. You know what I'm saying? Tony Parker is a Hall of Famer, but are they on the level of like a Scottie Pippen or an Isaiah Thomas? That's, Paul Gasol was great at what he did, but, he wasn't a dominating player. So I meant, it is what it is. That's like the weakest argument against Kobe. And there really isn't very many arguments to make against Kobe. Kobe was an absolute fucking baller who played in a stacked league and ended up, because, if I'm going to be real, okay, here's how we could sit there and tell. Take a prime Kobe, all right? Take a prime Kobe and put him on a team with that LeBron was on, with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh. Do you think that team is going to still win the championships against Oklahoma and against the Spurs the first time? Do you think that because I believe that Kobe could win a championship on those teams with Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade and Ray Allen. I totally believe that fucking Kobe would win still, regardless. He'd probably end up winning the one against freaking the Dallas Mavericks that they ended up losing. Now put LeBron on the Kobe teams with Paul Gasol. Put him on the team with Shaq. Hell, I don't give a shit. Do you think that they're still going to win? I don't know. I honestly don't know. You'd probably have to flip a coin. I don't think that, Now, we'll go ahead and go the other direction. We'll go ahead and put Kobe on a team with Scottie Pippen. Give Scottie a Kobe. Let them two work together. Kobe in his prime and Scottie in his prime. And I still think that they win titles. I think that they win championships. I still think that Kobe ends up at least winning 6. I still think that they end up winning 6 titles. I'm not going to sit there and say that they're going to win more titles with Kobe, but I think that Kobe, if you replace Kobe with Michael Jordan, they still win the same amount of titles with Scottie and Kobe in their primes. Now you put Mike and you put him with Shaq, especially Shaq, after he won that first title. After they won the first title, whenever Shaq wasn't showing up as much, whenever he was going out to McDonald's, eating Big Macs, doing all this shit. I meant just no fucking. I don't think that Jordan. I think that they would win a title, maybe two, but I don't think. I think it would have fell apart a lot quicker. I think it would because Jordan wasn't having that. Like you can go back and look up people talk about Jordan. Jordan was a complete and utter fucking sociopath, and I don't think he would have put up with Shaq. I just don't believe it. What's up, bro? Kobe and Dirk with Scotty. Yeah, well, I'm just sitting there saying that I think that Kobe, there's a case out there that Kobe should be considered the greatest player of this generation, at least the generational talent over Michael Jordan and over LeBron James. I really do. Certainly, you ain't putting fucking LeBron James on those. Uh, like it wouldn't even make sense to put LeBron James on the Jordan teams because he isn't a shooting guard, really. He'd be more like taking Scotty's place, to be honest with you, if you're going to be fair. But I don't know if you could put LeBron James on Jordan's teams and he's going to win 6 titles. I honestly don't believe that. I could believe that he could win 2 or 3, but it would be mainly Scotty would be the man. Scotty would be the man. Scotty would be exactly what Jordan is right now. He'd be the best defender, and he would be the guy that would shut down. And I think that, like I said, LeBron just chokes too much. Shaq being lazy did hurt his career, and he won't admit it. Yeah, if Shaq would have actually had the same kind of discipline as like a David Robinson or a Tim Duncan, if it would have been Tim Duncan instead of Shaq, then Kobe wins 4 titles in a row. If it's Tim Duncan, they probably win like 7 or 8. But the one of the greatest players are Kobe, Dirk, and Steph. Steph, well, I could sit there and say Dirk. I could put him up there pretty high. Steph, I can't. Like anybody from this generation of basketball, I haven't seen enough real basketball in probably the past, let's see, it's 2013, 8 or 9 years for me to justify saying that somebody now is in the NBA is one of the greatest. And that's ultimately because, like I said, the bar has been lowered so much for LeBron. It's everything has an asterisk by it. So, I'd like to sit there and say that, yeah, Steph is one of the greatest, but it would be hard because, like I said, the competition isn't the same. It's not as, I'm not saying that these players are horrible because I'm just saying that it's incomplete because I don't know. The bar has always been set so low for LeBron. And to keep him and the NBA title, and like I said, the reason why they do the shit is because LeBron was raised by a single mother. It's exactly why the NBA pushed it. They didn't want, like I said, they had an issue with Kobe. They used Jordan because they could market the North Carolina Tar Heels. They made a lot of money off of his college. They made a lot of money off of his sneakers. They absolutely love Michael Jordan because he was easy to market to, everybody. And ultimately, they made a lot of money off of Michael Jordan. They didn't like Shawn Kemp. They didn't like Kobe Bryant for the same exact reason. They didn't go to college. They didn't have the college jerseys that they could sell. They, wasn't able to be marketed like Jordan was. So it absolutely, they didn't really like Kobe coming in. They didn't like Shawn Kemp coming in straight from high school either. Because if, you're trying to market your college teams and stuff like that and you make money off of these college jerseys, well, then they want you to go to college. And then whenever LeBron came in, and he came in straight from high school, they had it all set up. This young man has a single mother. This is the guy that we want kids to look up to. And like I said, we could tell that he was raised by a single mother because he cries all the time. He can't handle criticism of his game. His fans certainly can't handle criticism of his fucking game. And, every time you say something, you're just a hater. It's just, being ignorantly bliss of, actually, holding yourself to some kind of standard, which, you could say that for both Jordan and Kobe. You can't say that for LeBron. So with that being said, I'm fixing to go ahead and wrap this video up, but I wanted to go ahead and do this video and say that absolutely to me, as far as I'm concerned, that I have to go ahead and give this to Kobe Bryant. I know that the Jordan fans don't want to hear it. I know that they don't want to hear it, but it's the absolute truth. If Jordan would have done what he did in the Western Conference with Hakeem, David Robinson, Charles Barkley, Clyde Drexler, Sean Kemp, and the bigger competition was in the West. If he would have done that in the West, and he would have went through and won all them championships, then yeah, I said that would be impressive. Yeah, you couldn't argue against him being the greatest of all time. Yeah, he would definitely overtake Kobe Bryant then. But the sure fact is that he played in an East that was very, very weak. And so he was allowed to look like a dynamic player that could take chances because the opponents were not as, they didn't have the same quality as they did in the East and they did in the West. Kobe Bryant, however, did play top quality opponents. Like I said, 450 win teams, and that wasn't with Shaq. That was with Paul Gasol to win his title. And then he still had to play probably the best player, the other best player of his generation in Tim Duncan. I mean, Tim Duncan was for Kobe what what Hakeem should have been for Jordan. But they never met. And Jordan will be the first one to tell you that he's not beating Hakeem in a series. It's just not going to happen. But the sheer fact is that the West, and all he had to do was sit there. And that Jordan will be the first one to tell you that he was, he said that he didn't want no part of Houston if they did come out of the fucking West. Whenever they did come out of the West to play for their 2 championships, Jordan retired. So think about that shit. He retired whenever Houston ended up going into the NBA Finals. Nobody was beaten. They had finally set up the offense to where they were going to make a title run. I think everybody knew that. And Jordan retired those 2 years. He wasn't going to beat Hakeem in the NBA Finals. He knew it. So anyways, yeah. That's it. I just wanted to do this video, because I've been thinking about this a lot. I think I've had conversations with Sanchez Clark about it and say, you know what? I don't like to admit it, but Kobe is probably, if you're going to talk about the GOAT conversation for anything that we've seen in the last 30 or 40 years in the NBA, I think I would have to go with Kobe. I would have to. He just did a lot more. Like I said, the LeBron James can hold their stats up and claim that this is why LeBron's the greatest. That doesn't make him the greatest. It just makes him the great stat padding motherfucker. And the Jordan fans can hold up 6 NBA championships and say, this is what makes him the greatest. He never lost an NBA Finals. Yeah, but you played in a weak-ass conference. You didn't have to go through the damn gauntlet that these players would have to go through in the West. Having to play. It's different whenever, fucking Utah has to play a 7-game series against the Spurs and then, play a 7-game series against the damn Sonics and they're, barely surviving and they're coming out having to play more games of basketball than Jordan. I'm sorry, you have to put that has to be taken into consideration. Rockets would destroy the Bulls in the NBA Finals. Hakeem would ultimately demolish Jordan, and Jordan's admitted that. That's something that Jordan absolutely admits. They didn't have an answer for Hakeem. There'd be no way that they could stop because Hakeem was like Kareem Abdul. So, yeah, I'll stick with Kobe because Kobe went one-on-one with Tim Duncan. which would have essentially been his Hakeem Olajuwon. And, he didn't win them all. He won about 50-50, because each of them won 5 titles apiece. But if Tim Duncan isn't if Tim Duncan isn't in there, then if Tim Duncan is not in the NBA, then, Kobe could have very easily have won 2 or 3 of those titles, if not all 5 of them. And then that he would be up there with we'd be talking about Kobe and Bill Russell, not Kobe and Jordan, not Kobe and LeBron. It'd be Kobe and fucking Bill Russell. But, like I said, it is what it is. It's fucking Duncan's one of the greatest players too. He could, like I said, Tim Duncan, could be totally considered as, in the conversation. You could throw Tim Duncan out there. But I think that if you're going to go Tim Duncan, you got to also talk about Kobe, because he's the one that, stopped him from winning his rings. So, yeah. Anyways, the Rockets would have easily won 5 titles right now if it wasn't for Jordan. I don't know. I don't know if they would have won 5 titles, man, because like I said at the beginning, that West was stacked. It was hard for them to get to the damn finals. It was hard for them to get to the finals. It really was. They were losing. And, and they went to the one in 1984, and they ended up losing, but they ended up losing to one of the greatest teams in the Boston Celtics. And then they went to the 2 in the 90s when they finally put a team that could get Hakeem out of the playoffs and into the finals. And once they were able to get Hakeem into the finals, Michael Jordan retired those 2 years because he didn't want to lose in the NBA Finals, and he knew he would have. But, yeah, if they would have had that team and they would have kept on to that team, then, yeah, they probably could have won easily 5 titles. I don't know if Jordan ever comes back, to be honest with you, if they keep that team that they had. I think that Jordan stays retired. But, yeah, back in 93, he won his 3 titles, leaves the game of basketball, goes and becomes a professional golfer. But, yeah, he wouldn't have, and I don't care what the Bulls fans say. This is coming from a Spurs fan, not a Rockets fan, but the Bulls wouldn't have beat those Rockets teams. I hate to tell you that. They wouldn't have beat the Houston Rockets. So, you could say whatever you want to. I get it. I'd probably put Jordan as definitely one of the greatest, up there with Kobe, definitely over LeBron. But from a Spurs fan, I can't stand fucking Kobe, because we would probably have 10 titles if it wasn't for Kobe Bryant. That fucking decade would have been the San Antonio Spurs decade. They would have ruled it. Tim Duncan, Robinson could have probably gotten about 4 rings between them. And then with the way Popovich, they probably could have won about, 2 or 3 more of those titles that the Lakers won. But, yeah. So I'm going to have to go with Kobe, while the NBA fans out there are marking out for LeBron, and they're trying to make the comparison to Jordan. That's not there. A lot of y'all sleep on Kobe, but I'm going to go out there and say that Kobe is definitely the greatest of our generation, I'll say. So I won't say the greatest of all time. And saying greatest of all time is kind of like a tongue-in-cheek thing anyways. But definitely of our generation, I think that Kobe is our generational talent, even over Jordan and even over LeBron. But you people tell me what you think in the comment sections. You'll like, sub, do the shit YouTube tells me to do to get over. And for now, I'm out.